Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Idea to Income Photography Podcast. If you are new, I am Michelle Kuzmic, your host. I have been a photographer for the last 23 years and built my business through all stages of my kids' lives. And now I'm on a mission to make it as simple as possible for women just like you to start and scale their own photography business. The journey to motherhood and entrepreneurship is not easy, but I figured it out and I want to help you to do the same. I hope you'll join me each week as I give you tidbits of information and practical strategies to build a business and life on your own terms, because that's how it should be. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the P word, pricing. Does that word make you cringe? If so, you are not alone. I'm going to give you some practical strategies you can start using on how to price your services and raise your prices as you grow your business. But first, I wanted to share an email I got yesterday from one of my Idea to Income students. Carrie began her business in September from scratch. She hadn't been on any of the recent coaching calls, so I reached out to her to ask her how I could support her and get her back on track. Turns out she is running her own track, and this is the response I got from her. Hi, Michelle. I've been working hard to build a client base. I've missed the calls because of family, church, and photography commitments. I completed some dance mini sessions that I'm working on editing today, and I took school class portraits along with a few individual portraits for my kids' homeschool group. Several parents asked about sessions for their family, so I am starting to get busy. Thank you for checking in. I am getting messages like this daily, and I couldn't be more excited for the women who said no to their fears, stepped outside their comfort zone, and are making it happen. If you're listening, Carrie, I'm dropping a small goodie in the mail to you this week to celebrate your success. Now, let's jump right into today's episode, pricing. Lots of photographers struggle with it, whether they're new and experienced and everyone in between. So if you listen to my podcast number 3, when I went through some of my own wins and losses for 2022, I talked about how I changed my senior portrait pricing structure and it did not work at all. So for 2023, I'm in the process now of going back to my 2021 collections and changing them up a bit. I'm telling you that because I want you to know that after 23 years as a business owner, pricing is always going to be a work in process. I know photographers that have spent so much time over obsessing it and getting it right, they've lost sleep. If you're asking yourself questions like, am I too new to charge? The answer is no, by the way. And how much should I charge? If that's getting your palms sweaty, you're in the right place today. Spoiler alert, there is no magic number for newbies. And also, pricing isn't a one-size-fits-all. If you asked 100 successful photographers how to price your work, chances are you'd get 100 different answers. Pricing is a personal decision based on your business goals, not on what everybody else is charging. If you only want to make $500 a month shooting 5 sessions, it's okay to only charge $100. If you want to make $10,000 a month shooting 5 sessions, it's okay to charge $2,000. I work with photographers daily to help them create a pricing structure. In the Idea to Income Mentorship Program, I actually have a whole module dedicated to it, and I give plug-and-play spreadsheets, and we work together to create an amazing client guide. So you can not only wow your customers, but you know that you're going to be at profit level. Some of the photographers that I work with only want to make enough money to go on vacation. Some of them want to make 6 figures and quit their day job. My goal for this podcast, no matter what your goals are, is to give you a starting point of where to begin your base collection and not make the same mistakes I did. So if you'd like to work together on a deeper level, I'll put the link to the coaching options for the Idea to Income Mentorship in the show notes, or you can go to michellekuzmic.com/idea to income for information. So I grew my business from the ground up. My first wedding, I only charged $50 plus the cost of film and developing. Now, before you lose faith in me as an educator, I wanted to share the story about how that came about. I went to Michael's, it's a craft store in case you don't have one in your area, to learn how to use acrylic paints to hand color my portraits. This was in 2000, so I was shooting film and I took in my own black and white prints to color. The instructor noticed my images, assumed I was a photographer, and asked me how much I charge for weddings. I threw out the number and I was officially a business owner. Totally bad idea. Because although those clients loved their images and they would refer me to their friends, which is literally how I built my business the first couple years, I was known as the cheap photographer or the reasonable photographer, and it took me a while to get my prices up to where I was making a decent income. Like I mentioned before, pricing is based on your business goals. Some photographers are really happy making a little bit of money here and there, and some need to make the money to pay the bills, which was the case after I had my first child, and I did not want to go back to work. I honestly wish I could give you a number and say this is a great place to start, but I can't. But I do have some guidelines to ask yourself to help you determine what works for you. So, question number 1, some photographers think the first thing they need to figure out is how much they should charge, but it's not. The first question is really, what are your business goals? My business has been different things to me at different seasons of my life, so no matter what you answer, it is okay. There is no right and wrong. The second question you need to ask yourself is, if I could wave a magic wand and you could achieve any income level you wanted in the next 5 years, what would it be? This is important because if you want to make $100,000 a year in photography, you can't do that charging $100 a session. And trust me, you don't want to start out charging $100 a session and then try to raise your prices to $2,000 per session. It's just not going to go over well. So it's okay to price yourself low starting out, but the smart way to do it is by calculating a number that is where you want or need your prices to be, then discounting it the first year as you grow your business. So what do I mean by that? If you need to make $1,000 a session starting out, you tell your clients, I normally charge $1,000 a session, but for the month of March or whatever month it is, I'm doing portfolio building sessions for $500 or whatever type of discount you're comfortable giving with them. So always go higher rather than lower with the end in mind. The next question is, how much do you need to charge to cover your monthly business expenses and write yourself a paycheck? When I was shooting weddings, my average was around $3,000 to $3,500. Now, if you've never been a business owner, $3,000 sounds pretty good for a day's work. However, if your monthly expenses are $500, your profit is only going to be $2,500. And weddings are far from one day's work. So if you want to make $1,000 a month and your monthly business expenses are $200, that means you need to plan on bringing in $1,200 to make it work so you can write yourself a decent paycheck. So pricing is important, there is no doubt. And if you're too high, you may not book anything. And if you're too low, that's going to be a problem too, because you will book everyone and you're going to be a broke burnout photographer that takes a lot of pictures and looks successful. There's a difference between busy and successful, and I want you to have a full calendar according to what you want to be successful. I recommend creating 3 collections or options for your clients to purchase when starting out. Use those collections for 3 to 6 months to make sure you have a good grasp on who your ideal client is and what they want. Then you can adjust as needed. It's always easier to go down in price than to raise your prices. At the end of the time period, the 3 to 6 months, if you feel like you need to raise your prices, raise each collection by 20%, and none of the clients that you'd shot in the previous months are going to notice it at all. So after you've been in business for a while, you'll get an idea what your client base is comfortable with, and it's going to be easier to craft your collections. So at the end of each episode, I like to give some action items, and I'm also really big on journaling and mindset. So here you go. Grab out a piece of paper, your journal or whatever, and ask yourself the 3 big questions from this episode. What are your business goals? If I could wave a magic wand and you could achieve any level of income you wanted in the next 5 years, what would it be? How much do you need to charge to cover your monthly business expenses and write yourself a decent paycheck? Start crunching those numbers and see what comes up. After you get a number in place, if it feels good to you, go with it. If it doesn't, ask yourself why. I do lots of mindset work with my clients in the academy to help them get over their fears of not being too salesy and not being good enough. So once you identify what the problem is and why it doesn't feel good to you, it's a whole lot easier to find the solution. I am really big on creating a business that feels good and makes you money. Again, if you want to work with me on a deeper level, michellekuzmic.com/idea to income. I'm now offering 2 ways to work with me, group coaching and one-on-one, so you can decide what works best. I will put that in the show notes as well. And that's it. I gave you some things to think about. Carve out some time today to work on that. It should only take you about 25-30 minutes at the most. And I will see you next week. Life is short. It's time to take your shot. I'll be cheering you on.